So this recording starts with us both cracking the fuck up.
Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture.
Welcome to a very special guest episode of Lexitecture, featuring the one and only Ms. Erin Bell. Erin is a long-time listener and just a great supporter of the podcast. She is a Patreon supporter, and she's a person who gets in touch. She emails us and gets in touch on social media and suggests words for our word extravaganzas, and is just kind of part of our whole thing. So when I discovered that Erin was going to be in Scotland, very briefly, it seemed like a great idea to meet up, and we've done a bit of sightseeing, and now we're going to chat a bit about words. Erin is a much better qualified person to talk to you about words than I am, and she will explain why that is.
Hi, everyone. So I am originally from the United States, from Colorado, and I have been listening to the show since pretty much the very beginning. I kind of just found it on Spotify, like looking for podcasts about words. And during 2020, during the lockdown, I kind of, it came to my attention that maybe my obsession with words and etymology was something I could get an education in.
Hooray for education.
Right. At the time, I was an accountant, so it's a very different field. Confused a lot of people when I said, I was like, I'm going to go to school for linguistics.
They're like, whoa, numbers. You do numbers.
But the math, like, what about that? I was an accountant by accident. That's a long story.
Oh, we love those, yeah.
And I didn't start out that way. Anyway, so I applied for and got into a linguistics program at Trinity College, Dublin, in Dublin, Ireland. And at the moment, I am writing my thesis, dissertation, called different things, different places. And my dissertation is actually on the idioms that are used in primarily American English, because I am from the US and I speak American English. But one of the reasons why I'm talking about idioms, and idioms are phrases which in specific cultures have specific meanings that wouldn't necessarily transfer over to anywhere that even speaks that same language. And one of the reasons I'm talking about that is because I have a deep love of folktales and fairy tales. And the stock phrase "once upon a time" that is used to start English language stories a lot of times is itself an idiom. And I saw someone put on Twitter, I'm not a Twitter user, so clearly, someone tweeted that, you know, they were like, what phrases do you in other cultures start your stories with? And so, like, English language ones are usually like, once upon a time, long ago, there once was. But other languages, other cultures use things like beyond the seven mountains, or before there was a time, before there was a place. One of my favorites was, it's not a direct translation, but from Irish. One of them was like, there once was a place and a time, but I wasn't there, because if I was, then I wouldn't be here. But I heard of it one time, was basically. And I love that so much.
I feel like I have a real insight into the personality of that speaker before they've even started the story.
That's exactly
beautiful.
it. Like, I heard it this time one time. I wasn't there. Don't ask. I'm not that old. But I just
Super
love
cool.
that. Yeah. And so I kind of like took that and kind of ran with it.
Tell me about the Seven Sisters.
Oh yeah. So the Seven Sisters. So another reason why I like fairy tales is the overlap between different cultures and languages, and part of that is shared stories. And one of the shared stories that I really like is kind of a fun party fact to tell people. Other people tell me it's fun. That's not just me saying that.
I wasn't questioning you. I'm totally down for that.
My sister questions me on that a lot. Is the tale of the constellation, the Seven Sisters. So it's this constellation that it right now only has 6 stars. But across cultures, there are stories of how it used to have 7 stars, and scientifically they can prove that it did used to have 7 stars. But these, all these cultures, there's cultures in like Northern Europe, there's some in Northern Africa, China, all that. They all have stories of the 7 sisters, or the 7 horses, or the 7 brothers, and how they all, and they all include how it became 6, how the 7th sister disappeared.
I am absolutely going to look this up, because I had no idea that the Seven Sisters didn't have 7 stars in it, first of all. And I do feel a little bit cheated, I'm not going to lie. But also, it's kind of it's sort of like one of these story starters that you give to a class, or you give to kids. Like, there used to be 7 stars, and now there are only 6. What happened?
Yeah.
You know, you can see that there is a sort of universal fascination in how would that come to pass.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Erin is going to tell us. I wasn't sure if we should do like an episode. I didn't want to like cheat on Ryan, basically. It's what's going on here?
I am the new Ryan.
Oh my God. It makes me so uncomfortable to even hear you joke that
Never. No one can replace Ryan.
cannot be replaced. Absolutely not. So Erin, I didn't like ask her to prepare a word, because, you know, it seems a bit rude to invite someone to be your guest and then give them homework. But also, I didn't prepare a word. But also, don't worry, we've got a plan. Actually, I have got a plan. For once, there's a plan. And so Erin is, rather beautifully, she's going to tell us a story about one of the things that she's been studying. And I'll just shut up. She's going to tell you all about it. It's so awesome.
So Amy didn't give me homework, but my school gave me homework. So part of my thesis, I'm looking at a deep dive into the history of an etymology of once upon a time. Because again, it's kind of what got me started in this whole thing. So I figured full circle, right? So the main fact that I found like super interesting. So I was looking at the grammar of these different phrases and the parts of speech that are used in each one. And all of the Germanic language phrases, most of them translate roughly to there once was, or once there was. But English obviously is once upon a time, and upon is just like a weird word to begin with. So that just like pulls it out of context, like makes it look different. And as it turns out, it is very different. It uses a completely different grammatical structure to any of the Germanic phrases. So it's got different parts of speech. It has them in a different order. And so I was trying to figure out like where that may have come from. Because English itself is heavily Germanic, and it is part of the Germanic language family. But because it's had such a strong interaction with other languages and other language families, there was a possibility of it coming from somewhere else.
I mean, English it's like the biggest magpie of all the languages.
Yeah, yeah.
Which must be super fun when you come to study it. And you're like, I think I know, oh no, I know nothing. Actually, it's from everywhere, it's all the things.
It can be. It can also make it really hard.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is, this appeared, we don't know where it came from. So,
Which is super fun when you're like doing a little etymology,
Right.
a little etymology podcast, but not quite so fun when you're like being asked to draw academic conclusions.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt. You know the score on the interruption, same as everybody else around
Right.
here. But I wanted to just check, partly for my own like. I don't know an awful lot about English grammar because
Okay.
I am of the generation in this part of the world where it wasn't terribly fashionable to teach English grammar.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I spent a decade working as an English teacher. I have more than a passing interest in what English grammar
Yeah.
consists of and how that works. But most of the grammar that I know I actually learned from studying languages like Latin and French.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to check. Once is
It can be a
Conjunction?
couple things. In this usage, it's an adverb.
okay. Upon is definitely a preposition.
Preposition, yep.
Article. Time
Time is noun.
is a noun. Once upon a time. Okay.
Yeah. So
But
the way
adverb?
it breaks down, once upon a time is an adverb followed by a noun phrase. So it's a noun and prepositional phrase. So it's a preposition followed by all the stuff that goes with it.
Cool.
So adverb, prepositional phrase. Versus the Germanic phrases, those are usually adjective, subject, noun phrase.
Okay.
There's a lot more parts to their phrases, which was one of the reasons that kind of clued me in that it was different.
Sure.
So yeah, so it's really complicated. It took a lot of weird like word math for me to figure this out.
I sort of love the word math though.
Grammar is word math.
I had a student once who was like a full-on maths genius. You know, like he was studying for university entrance exams aged 12 kind of thing.
Yeah.
I won't name him because he was my student, and that seems a bit weird and unprofessional. But he was a super duper like absolute genius level maths kid, and he was pretty good at English too. But he had these sort of, he would get very interested in a topic around about maths, and when he came into my class, we were studying the Wilfred Owen poem Dulce et Decorum Est. Do you know it? Mm-hmm. And he was really into, as this little side thing, he was really into computational logic, right? Now, what I know about computational logic, it would not take me a whole lot of time to tell you about it. Let's just leave it at that.
Same.
And so he quite liked to stay behind after class and explain things to me, tell me about what he was studying, and I would say, "Come on in, yep, let's." And during one of these conversations, he picked up a whiteboard marker and he started writing on my whiteboard to demonstrate what he meant, and he showed me the kind of basic chunks of computational logic. As far as I understand it, is basically what drives computer programs. It's saying this chunk and this chunk, and these interact in different ways, and you can do maths with those things. You know, you can cancel out things that are the same, and you can combine them in various different ways, and you can reach a conclusion at the end.
Yeah.
And so it occurred to me one day while he was chatting about this. So one of the kind of most obvious features of Dulce et Decorum Est, in the second half of the poem, there is this. The term for it's completely flown out of my head as I've been talking about this. A conditional sentence.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so the most famous conditional sentence in poetry is Rudyard Kipling's if you can keep your head when all about you. And so it's the idea that there's if starts the sentence, and that sets up the idea that later on there is a condition that must be fulfilled.
Yes.
And so Dulce et Decorum Est has that going on. If you two could trudge behind the wagon that they flung him in, all that stuff. And this kid was talking to me about this, and I'd said to him, I think you can use computational logic to show me how this poem ends. And he went, oh, and then he did.
It's like magic.
And I did not really understand exactly what all those symbols on my board meant, but he absolutely he was like, word maths.
Yeah.
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 I love it. Sorry, please continue.
No, it's okay. That's exactly what grammar is.
Yeah.
I'm not good at math. So my first term in my degree, government accounting is less math. My first term, I had a grammar class, and basically it was math. And it was like, You have these two things together and they make this thing. You have this thing, but you have this thing in parentheses, so it makes this other thing. Like, I was dying. I was not good at that class. I passed. That's the important part. That's one of those, like, C's get degrees moments.
I've never heard that before. That's an excellent phrase.
Yeah, like, you just gotta pass and you'll graduate. That's what I was going for. So far, so good. Yeah, so grammar is word math. So basically, I was trying to figure out why the equations of English once upon a time did not match up with the equations of the Germanic phrases, or even the Romance phrases. So Italian, French, all those languages, because their phrases are actually quite similar to Germanic.
Okay.
Most of theirs translate to "it was a time."
Right. Okay.
Like almost all of them are exactly that phrase. It was a time.
It was a time.
I have whole charts in my thesis for all this stuff. I was like, let me spell it out for you.
Oh, I love a chart.
Oh yeah,
A chart and a checklist. Makes me
so
happy.
great. So yeah, so I was looking at it, and as it turns out, one of the other languages, language families that English has come in contact with is the Celtic language family. For the Celts of the Irish Islands, of Britain and Scotland and Wales and all that, which correct me if I'm wrong, all of that is referred to as the British Isles.
Well,
Sort of.
I don't. Interesting sociolinguistic question. I think that the glaring exception there is England. I think
Yeah.
that to refer to anything without England as the British Isles would raise a few eyebrows in England, certainly. And I think too that Celtic nations tend to have an identity as a Celtic nation. So
Yeah.
I suspect that for those reasons, referring to it as the British Isles would like, as I say, raise a few eyebrows,
Okay.
perhaps. Also, my nerdy geeky brain forces me to point out that Breton is also a Celtic language,
It is.
as far as I understand.
Yes, it is indeed.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
Weirdly though, it's in France.
yeah. Well, this does certainly put paid to the whole British Isles affair. But yeah. So my understanding of the Celtic languages, Irish Gaelic, Scots Gaelic, Welsh, Breton. What have I missed?
Cornish and Manx.
Yes, Cornish and Manx. So again,
Yeah.
parts of England, but
now you aren't really.
yeah.
Anyway. So that part of this part of the world,
Sure.
this group of islands that are off the coast of France.
This group of thrawn, slightly prickly people who are like, we're not that thing that you told us that we were.
Don't tell me what I am. Yeah. Anyway, so the Celts, there have been people on these islands for millennia, like since before writing existed, and there are examples of writing, like carvings from the Picts, Picts, and they are in Scotland mostly, and they kind of mix in with the Bretons that arrived, and with the Norse invaders at some point. And so the Celtic languages, all their story phrases, the one I looked at specifically, let me see. I have a chart. I made a chart so I could explain this to people. Where did it go? My thesis is 22 pages long, so give me a second.
Only the 22.
I'm not even done yet. I have a whole nother section I gotta write. So Breton, theirs roughly translate to a time there was. I think it is pronounced Urwech Ewa. I looked it up on YouTube one time. That's vaguely what it sounded like to me. Scottish Gaelic, part pardon. I live.
Do you know what?
I live in Ireland, so Gaelic
is the default.
is what's in my head.
It's a very new piece of knowledge to me, that one. I would
they're
always
different.
have said Scottish Gaelic.
Yeah.
But I believe Gaelic is the
Yes, you are correct from what I know. So Gaelic is day or one day. There was this. Lacha Vasho. And then Irish is long ago in Erin, which is the Irish name for Ireland.
How very fitting.
So fado in Erin. And then Welsh is time long in back or before. The definition of back being like before in time is a very outdated definition. Obscure is what I think the OED called it. But it still exists in phrases like this. So the Welsh is amser me inu or inthul, something like that.
Good luck to anybody who is not Welsh, who has not grown up speaking Welsh,
Yes.
who can actually pronounce Welsh.
I can do a couple of the sounds of Welsh, and I know what some of their like Roman letters sound like, but I do not speak Welsh. So again, there's a time there was, day there was this, long ago in Erin, time long before, and then once on a time. Those sound vaguely familiar, vaguely connected. And as it turns out, the Irish and Welsh phrases are the exact two constructions that once upon a time could be. So they're either a noun phrase, which is a noun and all the parts that go with it, so like all the adjectives and things, followed by a prepositional phrase. So again, a preposition with all the parts that go with it. So once, the noun phrase, upon a time, prepositional phrase, or an adverb followed by a prepositional phrase. And neither of those constructions are present in any of the Germanic languages. So I was making, how does Ryan used to say it?
Satisfying academic noises. I was just going to say, I'm going to be making some satisfying academic noises around here. Oh, so much so.
Like, I was like freaking, I texted my mom because I was like trying to figure out what to write. I was like, why are these not connecting? And I found this connection. I was like, whoa! I found it. Like, I was so excited.
That is so exciting.
It was it was wonderful. It was a breakthrough moment for me.
I'm just sitting here grinning the whole time that you're talking. Yeah.
Yeah. And also the grammar part of my paper, I did not want to write. It was something my supervisor made me put in so that she could supervise me. She was like, you have to talk about grammar. And I was like, fine. So this brings it in a way that I had not intended.
Which is kind of how research works.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But it brings it in, and I was really excited to connect that.
Super cool.
So after I found that, I was like, well, let's look at the words in Once Upon a Time, because the grammar is Celtic, but the words clearly are not. So I looked at each of the words separately, once, upon, and time. All of them go back all the way back to pi, meaning vaguely the same things, which I just love so much. That is my favorite class of words, is words that have always meant the same thing. So once, as the OED defines it, at or for one time only, without reference to when. So like sometime before.
Yeah, which is kind of like it was a place and a time and a story. I wasn't there, but it happened.
That's exactly it. It's also used in, it can be used in future tenses as well. So like once I do this, then I can do this.
That will happen, yeah. Cool.
So it can be traced back through Middle English to Old English and all the way back into pi. So once is a combination of Old English in, I don't speak Old English,
Neither
so
do I.
just,
Don't
you
worry
know,
about it.
just a grain of salt.
We'll manage.
ENE, which is a word that means one or one occasion. And then the suffix S, which is used as the genitive or the possessive S. So a time belonging to one time. So one's time. Just kind of like pronunciation kind of like went into one word instead of two. And so kind of tracing the, oh, it's scrolled.
There's nothing quite like the fear of the accidental scroll, is there? Like, ah, the world shifted.
My phone. Oh, what order did I write my paper in? That's the question.
This is, it's so super cool.
We're almost there. Okay.
Where was our pie?
So the current spelling, the CE at the end instead of an S, came from like the early 16th century, so 1500s. Most likely because of the advent and use of the printing press.
Sure.
It was used one time, and then everyone was like, "That sounds good,"
That's that
and just
word.
kept going. That will come into play upon as well. So going backward in time, the 19th and 20th century, it was wans, W-A-N-S, once, W-O-N-C-E,
Oh, I like that.
or onced, one, apostrophe, S-T,
Onced.
onced. That one, I believe, comes from Yorkshire. They have a lot of interesting pronunciations that I found, which
very
I
much
just
so.
love them. So then in the 18th century, they had some of those, and then Yance, Y-A-N-C-E. 16th century is once, O-N-S-E. Again, that possessive S. And then the spelling gets kind of weird. Before that, because people didn't know how to spell. AKA spelling was made up because everyone kind of just wrote however it sounded. So we've got things like unis, O-O-N-E-S, enis, E-N-Y-S, eans, E-A-N-E-S, and that's in Middle English. And then Old English, it's ons, it's the A-E.
Oh, the thorn.
Thorn, yeah, the fancy looking one. Thorn, N-E-S.
Eans. Okay.
Eats. And that used to be pronounced as two syllables. So it was honest.
Nice.
Honest. And so following it through, you've got honest, ennis, onus, owns, yance, once, once.
Beautiful.
And it just kind of like follows back through. And like the great vowel shift, as they call it, that had a big effect on how it went from an ah to an eh to an o sound. That's a whole, no one really knows why that happened. It just kind of happened.
Just kind of was a thing.
Yeah. It has been tied to the disconnect between the Normans kind of cut off from France around the 1400s. They were like, we don't have land over there anymore, so we're just going to start speaking English. And then it just kind of like affected English from that point. But again, no one really knows why the verb or the vowel shift happened. So then once kind of goes all the way back through Proto-Germanic, Aines, A-I-N-A-Z, or Z, as they say here, which meant one or unique, which is also the root for Old Norse and Old Danish ein, which in Danish and Norwegian and German and all that, the word one is basically that. It's E-E-N or E-I-N-E. Eine.
And in Scots. Ein.
Yeah. So like it all connects, and it's really interesting. And then that all goes back through the PIE root, Again, I don't speak pie, so
Who speaks pie?
you'd be surprised. No, I'm just kidding. Just pull that out of my pocket. Oh, that's me. What a party trick. The pie root oino, O-I-N-O, which meant one. So,
Like you say, words that
thing.
mean the same.
and that root also gives us the English words alone, none, inch, ounce, and strangely, onion.
Oh my God! My husband and I make this joke all the time. How many onions do I need? One onion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It literally comes from the word one, so you're not wrong.
That is fantastic. That's made me almost as happy as all the other things that you've said. Just that little factoid. One onion.
Yes.
Love it.
So I know that one gave me a kick. I was just like, yep, I'm putting that in my paper.
Sweet.
I don't care. Like, I will make a note that is weird, and I'm gonna say that. And do we have time for more?
Yeah, crack on.
Okay,
absolutely.
Cool. I don't want to talk forever.
Oh no, I kind of want you to talk forever.
I could talk forever about this. So then we're gonna skip upon for the moment,
Okay.
because that one's kind of weird, a little weird. So we're gonna go to time. So time, the OED defines as a finite extent or stretch of continued existence.
Oh.
As it turns out, it's really hard to define time without using the word time, because that is the only definition that didn't have time in it.
As you, like, literally as you were saying that sentence, I was like, surely the word time is good.
No. No.
That is a very difficult thing to do.
Another kind of vague definition, the period during which an action, condition, or state continues, or period of time distinguished as being past, present, or future, with reference to the present moment.
These totally sound like the papers written by kids who use online thesauruses.
Yes, that is exactly
1000%.
it. Yes, that OBD was like, yep, I'll take that. Thank you. So, like, all of them kind of put together, time means a moment marked as being in the past, usually by the use of, in this case, by the use of once. So one time in the past, during which an action or thing happened. And part of the importance of the use of this, the use of once and time, is story starter phrases like once upon a time are generally used, and here's where my love of folklore and fairy tale study comes in. They're used to create a sense of distance and separation between the audience and the events of the story, so that they are able to suspend belief, and so that they are able to face anything negative in that story without it physically affecting them. Yeah. So it makes it so these stories are not happening. They are something that could happen but are not happening.
It's like a line. It's like that holding somebody's hand when you watch a scary film,
Yes.
to remind you that you're
That
in the,
you are
you're in
in
the
the
world.
present. Mhm.
Yeah,
That's exactly it.
that's so cool.
So this, using once and time, so once, this time, is that separation that people need for stories.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I know, right? I just love it. I do have some book recommendations for anyone that is interested. I can recommend some really interesting
I am interested.
fairy tale books, idiom books, all that. So we can like put it in show notes or something.
Yeah, definitely.
So time is another word that comes from pi. So going back in time, we've got from the 19th and 20th century, we've got time, toime. I believe that one is from Yorkshire again, T-O-I-M-E. Or time, T-E-I-M-E. Pre-18th century, we've got time, T-Y-E-M.
Time. Yeah, I like that.
Middle English, we've got time, T-E-Y-M-E, or T-I-M. Again, the vowel shift.
Middle English really just did what the fuck it wanted, didn't it?
Yeah.
They were
So-
like, here are some letters, make it work.
Right, figure it out. That's pretty much what it was. Old English, we've got time, T-Y-M-E, or Tima, T-I-E-M-A. And the Old English Tima, or Tima, T-I-M-A, meaning limited space of time, so a period of time.
Okay.
Traces back to Proto-Germanic Timon, T-I-M-O-N, which meant time, which is also thought to be a source of Old Norse, timey, Old Icelandic, timi. Modern Icelandic uses a variation of this phrase,
Okay.
Sinni, S-I-N-N-I, which ties in, if you look at it, you can see the connection. And like speaking wise, the T and the S are very similar forms in the mouth.
Okay.
So t, s.
Yeah.
So it is very common for those two to switch between languages and phrases. And then there's some disagreement on the pi root of this one. Some people think it's related to the pi root for tide, like the ocean tide,
Ah, okay.
but people aren't really certain about that.
It's a pretty story.
Yes, it is a good story.
Yeah.
It's one of those, like, it could just be a folk etymology story. But the one the OED lists and Etym Online lists is the pi root for DA, so da, which means to divide.
Oh, I love it.
So it's a suffixed form of to divide.
Because
so
that's
demon.
what time does. It splits things up
divides.
into
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So that one makes a little more sense than tide. But I do like the idea.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Oh, they're both really beautiful.
Yeah. So demon, which is the suffixed root of it, gives us. Oh no, I did it again. My stupid phone. No. Okay. Oh, I found it again. Okay. This pi root connects to dole, as in to dole out.
Okay.
Tide, tiding, tithe.
Right.
Damage, demon, ordeal, and tip.
Ooh.
So some interesting
Yeah,
connections
that is a mixed
there.
bag.
Yeah. I do appreciate that the word for time also gave us demon,
Yeah.
because that's how I feel about time sometimes.
As someone who is not all that good at the time, I get it.
Oh man, yeah, it's great. So then lastly, upon. So upon is a preposition, which the OED defines as in, at, or during any period of time, also in the course of. This definition is marked as obsolete because generally nowadays upon is used really only in this phrase or as on something.
Yeah. That would have been my kind of first.
Yes.
You know, my immediate guess.
Yes.
To
Which
put a thing on a thing.
its history makes sense. Another definition on the occasion of.
Okay.
So the first citation of this specific word and spelling is from the 15th century, which is so long. And the spelling of this, do I talk about this? No, I should put that in here. I'm reading my paper as we're going. So I'm like, let's add some more words to my word count. So it used to be, the phrase used to be once on a time, which same grammatical structure, just a different word. And that was fairly common up until about 1492-ish. And the printing press was introduced into England in 1476.
Okay.
So this, that time frame, kind of like, it makes sense that people were just figuring stuff out. Hold on. Now I'm questioning myself.
So I'm curious about this, like one of my pet language
Yes.
loves
Yes.
is like linguistic sound effects. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm absolutely a person who shamelessly makes the joke nice assonance, because assonance is
It's a good one.
it's maybe my favourite like linguistic literary technique
Yeah.
of all. And it's gotten to the stage now where, like, I explained this to my husband a little while ago, and he was like, and I think I used the example of like band names, song lyrics, advertising, so like, and
Yeah.
so I'll be like, why is that a good name for that thing? And he'll be like,
Because
it's an assonance.
Uh-huh.
And the other thing that I find super interesting is the idea of cadence and rhythm in language. And English is a very iambic language
Yes,
by
it is.
nature. So did once on a time
Ba.
become once upon a time because it's a little more iambic? Who knows?
Possible.
Yeah,
It
I
sounds
like
like
to.
a good story.
I do like the stories that sound good.
Yes. I do talk about folk etymology in my paper. I'm like,
Oh, yes.
these are things that sound good. May not be true, but they sound good. Okay, yeah. So I was questioning myself. I was correct. So the printing press got introduced in England in 1476. And so in 1490s, it started to become a little more standardized. The English Printers Guild didn't get a royal charter until 1557, meaning that they had the right to regulate their own industry without influence from the government or the church.
Oh, because they were not fond of people writing things down. Oh,
Yes.
Oh, no.
So at that point, they were able to start like printing a lot more not church-friendly things, and like plays and things started
This is
getting
where all the
printed
fun stuff
more.
happened.
Right, when the church is no longer involved. The very strict Protestant church of 1550s. So let's see. So the first OED citation of once on a time, we'll go back to upon in a minute, was from Chaucer's A Knight's Tale.
Hey,
So
good old Jeff.
his was the ones on a time myselfa, when Vulcanus had caught thee in his loss. So once on a time and myself, we were caught by the sun or something like that, I believe, is kind of a vague translation of that. But then in 1595, so about 20 years after the Printers Guild, 20, 30 years after the Printers Guild, when things had sort of settled and become more standardized, you get the usage of upon, so once upon a time. And then from that point on, of the 13 examples that the OED gives, only 2 of them use something other than upon. So, like, at that point, people were like, yeah, this is a good word. We'll just use this one now.
We like it. That one fits. Sounds good.
So, like, we don't know for sure that it was the printers that made the choice, but it's definitely, they were part of it.
That's so cool.
Yes, right? So that's kind of where it changed from once on a time, which upon is the combination of the words up on.
Oh, of course it is. Oh,
But you don't think about it.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I literally, like, I read that and I was like, oh, I feel dumb. Like, oh no. That's embarrassing.
I feel like everything to do with this podcast is either me feeling really clever or really stupid, with very little in between.
That's exactly it. So it like traces back all the way from like the 16th and 17th century of upon, A-P-P-O-N, 15th century upon, A-P-O-N or O-P-O-N. And then in Middle English, it's up on, and various spellings of that with extra P's and N's and O's, because spelling. And then these variants come from up on with influence from Old Norse, because the Norse came in quite a lot to Scotland area. just kind of like hung out for a while and
Yeah.
affected the language, because that's what happens.
We do like a Viking.
Yeah, you know. And their phrase, up, UPP, space, A, with a little forward / accent thing. I don't know what that's called. And so, like, people are pretty sure that English were like, that sounds like a good phrase. Let's make it English. So they're just like, up, on.
Which does seem to be very much how English got
Yes.
to be its thing.
Yeah. Yes.
We'll just have that, thanks.
Yeah, that's mine. Thanks. Bye. You can leave now. Thanks. That's kind of exactly what it is. So then that traces back to Proto-Germanic up, which spawned a ton of words that mean up in so many different languages and are spelled generally up
Oh, okay.
with some extra P's in there.
It's nice when things are simple.
Right.
For once.
Yeah. Not simply, though. The Pi root of this means from below.
Oh.
So up means from below.
But I like that. I like that a lot. Because if you're below something, then the only... Yeah.
The only way you get...
It does. It makes sense. It just takes you a minute to kind of wrap your
You're
brain
like, wait
around
a
it.
second. Yeah.
We were in the airport the other day, and we had to find our gate. You know, as you do in airports, and there are signs everywhere. But we noticed that. Well, essentially, the first sign I saw, I was like, "Oh, gate 32, whatever it was. It's that way. Oh, we need to go downstairs." Mm-hmm. And then we realised there weren't any downstairs. The down arrow meant go
Forward.
straight on.
Yeah.
But usually the go straight on arrow would point up.
Right.
So, and I had said, I mean, I suppose it really depends on where you're looking from to start off with.
Right.
That's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
From below.
From below.
Which then evolved to like up from under, and then into over, and then it like became up.
Oh, nice.
And then you put on top of it, which means on top, and then just upon. So other words that may have come from this root are above, eave, E-A-V-E, like in a roof.
Oh, okay.
Often, open, vassal, V-A-S-S-A-L. The prefix hypo, as in hypothermia,
Got you.
and evil,
Hooray for evil.
which I love so much. So we've got evil and demon in this one phrase.
Yeah, coming from below.
I just love it so much.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So that is Once Upon a Time.
Once upon a time.
And I wrote 2,000 words on that, so...
Well, I kind of feel like, yeah, there's more to say about all of that,
Yeah.
isn't there? You know,
Yeah.
it's... I can't get past the notion of this phrase is here to remind you that this is a separate place, and that it's okay if things get bad. That's really, really lovely, because it kind of conjures up that... My friend and I often talk about this. We're like, it would be so cool to live in a time where the only stories that anybody knew were the stories that little group
Yeah.
of people knew. And the only way to get a new story was for a bard to appear from wherever the bards came from and sit down. And everyone would be like, awesome,
it was
a
a big
new
thing.
story, let's listen to it.
Yeah.
But the bard's like, okay, I'm just going to,
Just chill out for a second.
don't worry about it. It might get a little bit scary, but
Yeah.
we're good.
Yeah.
Like, I think it just kind of, it makes you feel that people would be so invested, you know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
enthusiastic about that situation that
Yeah.
they genuinely have to be reminded that it's not real, don't worry.
Right. One of my quotes that I found looking into kind of this separation was to signal that the story to follow is one that might be true, but safely is not. It provides a sense of separation from the events of the story, allowing listeners to suspend reality for a little while, thereby allowing them to sit in the uncertainty and fear which in reality would be uncomfortable and frightening, but in the world of the story is safe to enjoy.
Stories are everything.
They've been
That's-
around since
Since ever,
humankind existed.
yeah, since ever we could do that. Because I love wait as well. You know, Beowulf starts with wait. Like, pay attention,
Right.
everybody. And I was also thinking about like what you were saying about idiomatic phrasal idioms. Like in the Odyssey and the Iliad, where you have these little sort of chunks of story that have been sort of put together, mashed together, and they're also like they're there as little, almost like signposts to say to you, you know. So you have I can't remember any of the examples right now, obviously, because I'm trying to remember them off the top of my head. You have like quick, cunning Odysseus, or you have you know, the man who does such and such, and they're always described in exactly that way, which I suppose is a little bit like the whole in John's Gospel, where he always talks to the disciple Jesus loved. But yeah, these just it's just like a little shorthand
reminders of character.
There you go. That's the thing, and everybody goes, oh yeah, we understand that.
That guy. Okay, I know who you're talking about now. Yeah.
And so once upon a time it's that spell of the story's going to start now.
That's exactly it. So
fantastic.
Can I give you another fact about idioms?
Please.
So you mentioning the Odyssey and the Iliad made me think of Achilles' heel.
Yeah.
So Achilles, it's never mentioned in the Iliad that he is shot in the ankle, and it really anywhere it's never mentioned, and it doesn't appear, the story of him like being immortal except for that one spot doesn't appear until like 700 years later. A Roman author was like, we're just going to make this story about his mom dipping him in the river.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Fake news.
Right. That's exactly it. So someone saw that story. They saw pottery and a story of Paris, who shot Achilles, shooting an unnamed warrior, supposedly in the ankle. We're not really sure. He was just aiming downward. And they were like, that's how Achilles died. They just like made that connection, and now everyone thinks that.
That's the thing. Oh, I love that. So. Because of course the a lie can get around the world before the truth can get its boots on, and all of that stuff. Are you a Terry Pratchett reader? Again,
every now and again,
if you've ever listened to this podcast, you'll know that we love Terry Pratchett. But when you were talking about the printing press, I was thinking about, so there's a Discworld book where the printing press is invented and a newspaper starts up, and you know, and all that stuff, and it's so interesting because it's one of these ones where everything about that book that you read and go, well, this is so unlikely, it's obviously just made up for the book, is actually based it's based in facts, based in history, and like the notion of people being suspicious of the printing press because of the power of words. You can't just put words together like that and expect that it's all going to be okay, you know. It's there's something really, really beautiful and evocative of how important language was. But I think that, you know, stories continue to be as important now as they ever were then. Whether we're writing them down or putting them on TikTok. Oh, cool. Okay. So, dear listener, I also have to draw attention to, well, Erin's done two very awesome things. One, she's brought me a beautiful, beautiful gift. And the other thing is she's reminded me of something that we used to do on this podcast, like every single episode, that we haven't done for about, I don't even remember the last time we did this.
A long time.
And the feature that we used to have, proto-feature, I don't know what you call it, was called Hey Roger, What Do You Say? And the beautiful gift that Erin has brought me is this gorgeous, custom painted Roger's Thesaurus, which has on its back cover the phrase, Hey Roger, what do you say? It's so gorgeous, and I love it. And so in honour of her academic chops, I thought that I would just very, very quickly look up the word thesis. Although I suppose we could check out story too, that's been quite a relevant one. So thesis, there are actually, 4, there are 5 different categories for synonyms for the word thesis. So we've got topic, then we've got argument, then we have supposition, then affirmation, and then lastly, dissertation, which I think is quite interesting because even within those 5 categories, you've got some quite kind of different things going on. So if we take the first one, topic, we've got, some of these are very much not thesis material. I love it. Food for thought, gossip, Rumour. Your supervisor's having a heart attack right now. News, subject matter, subject, contents, chapter, section. Then we have subdivision, or what it is about, argument, plot, theme, message, text, commonplace. Oh, I never thought of that. The idea of a musical piece, an agenda, any other business. God, we got all these things. Thesis, case, point, argument, issue, moot point, debatable. Well, that's etymology all over. Point at issue, field of inquiry, field of study. Wowzers. Whereas
sense.
if we get ourselves over to dissertation, that seems appropriate. Do you guys say thesis and we say dissertation, or do people use the words interchangeably? What do you think?
In the U.S., dissertation is usually used for doctorates.
Okay.
And thesis is master's.
That's hilarious, because here it's the other way around.
In Ireland too.
Yeah.
It's dissertation is master's, thesis is doctorate.
Yeah, I wonder why that's... There is a question for another day.
Yes.
How is
It
that?
was probably America being like, no. Because that happened with a lot of English.
Now, as you would expect, when you look at the dissertation section of the word thesis in Roger's wonderful, wonderful world, I was just saying to Erin, I don't know if there is a Simon Winchester, the dictionary and the madman type equivalent of how Roger's thesaurus came to exist, but I would be very much interested to read more and learn more about that. So we have, it's much more scholarly in this part of the book, dissertation, treatise, tract, exposition, summary, compendium, theme, thesis, argument. Oh, what a lovely word. Disquisition. Oh. I suppose as an inquisition, but survey, discourse, monograph. There's something very like wire-rimmed spectacles about the word monograph. We have article, comment, review, rave, notice, critique. Oh, the word dissertate is in fact a word. I genuinely thought I was making that one up. One can dissertate or treat, handle, write about, deal with, discourse upon, argue, develop a thesis, go into depth, discuss, ventilate, air one's views, criticise, write a treatise, do a paper.
Honestly, right now that's what I'm doing. I'm
Write an
just
article,
doing a paper.
do a piece, annotate, commentate, and last but not least, interpret. Ways of communicating ideas. Well, I'm so delighted that you communicated your ideas about the phrase once upon a time to me and to anybody else who listens. And yeah, it's been a super fun afternoon. There's one more thing that I was going to mention. In fact, I can't remember if I mentioned this already, because we did have that Amy forgot to switch the microphone situation on early.
Yes.
But first of all, Erin listens to Lexitecture at double speed. My mind is blown by this, because I'm pretty speedy anyway. However, not speedy enough for this one. And also, if you too find that we're just not getting through the wordies quick enough, maybe this is not something that's occurred to you. You can, in fact, listen to podcasts at double speed if that so suits your brain. But the other thing, Ryan, I wish you were here. It would be awesome if you were here too. But Erin has just reminded me of it's been a long time since we've done a great transatlantic snack exchange, because Erin has shown herself to have impeccable good taste. We went to Stirling Castle, a place that I have also visited with Ryan and his wife, and she went into the gift shop, had a look around, bought some things, and two of the things she bought were, first of all, tablet. We've talked about tablet before. I'm pretty sure I sent you some tablet in the Great Transatlantic Snack Exchange. And the other thing that you may not have encountered yet is the wonderful national symbol, the Tunnocks caramel wafer. Now, if you're aware of the glory that is the Tunnocks caramel wafer, or indeed the Tunnocks tea cake or the Tunnocks snowball, then you are making not satisfied academic noises, just satisfied gustatory noises, even as I speak, I'm sure. And if you haven't found these things, then get them in your life and indeed in your mouths. Other than that, I think all that's left is for me to say a huge thank you to Erin for sharing her wonderful knowledge and enthusiasm, and also a huge thank you for just supporting this podcast thing that we do. We have really good fun doing it, and it is such a wonderful thing to hear that other people like it too.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for having me. And
you so
also for the North American listeners, American probably most likely, the caramel wafer bars are basically Little Debbie peanut butter crunch bars, but with caramel instead of peanut butter. So much better. So good.
I mean, I'm a fan of peanut butter, but I would probably defend the Tunnocks caramel wafer, you know. But thank you. It's good to have a small snack translation sometimes.
Thank you for having me. I very much enjoy this, and I look forward to whatever next episode you guys put out together. So, thank you very much.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at Lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.